the president may be considering military options still. It would be very difficult, I think, for the president to not consider some sort of major move against Iran, considering he drew a red line. The mass murder of protesters. Iran didn't just cross the red line, they jumped over it with both feet, shooting protesters by perhaps the tens of thousands in the streets in Iran. According to the Wall Street Journal, President Trump is still pressing aides for what he terms decisive military options. The discussions are happening while the U.S. sends an aircraft carrier and jet fighters to the Middle East. Those deployments may be the start of a broader buildup that would give President Trump the firepower to strike Iran should he choose to use them. So, a revised suite of options are being created for the president, including some that would seek to push the regime out of power. How much can be done with air power is really the big question. The White House has to grapple with whether the administration is prepared to carry out a sustained military campaign that might last weeks or months should the protesters in Iran again take to the streets and appeal to President Trump for protection. However, suffice it to say that if the president really does not take significant action against the Iranian government in the aftermath of telling the protesters to stay out in the street and, quote, help is on the way, that would not only be disastrous for the protesters in Iran, it would in fact be a signal to places like China that going after, say, Taiwan would not be reacted to by the United States with any sense of strength or alacrity. I very much doubt the president is.
Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So today I want to talk about Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, the Israel firster, Ben Shapiro. That idiot. He's been saying more stupid things, as he seems to love to do these days. It's a shame. He used to be such a smart guy, such a talented communicator, sort of like the gold standard of, the younger generation of conservative commentary. But man, ever since, October 7th, really, back in 2023, he's shown his true colors. He cares more about Israel than he does the United States, which is fine. You're allowed to care more about a foreign country than the country you currently live in, the United States. And, maybe you'll get away with it if you can talk really fast and have a wife who's a doctor. But for people like me, I can see through the charade. So I want to talk about this all because there's a viral clip going around about Ben Shapiro, and I want to talk about that. But before we get into it, I need you to do something for me, folks. It's so simple. It's so easy. Anyone can do it. Even a liberal can do it. That's how easy it is. I need you to subscribe, whether on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, and also if you are listening on the YouTube, like and comment helps a lot with the algorithm. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. So as you just heard at the beginning of this podcast, Ben Shapiro is talking about how we need to, of course, bomb Iran. This is like water. Well, Ben Shapiro is saying we need to bomb Iran like water is wet. Like, that's just how life is these days. You have Ben Shapiro begging the United States government to do the bidding of Israel, okay, which is, fantastic. We have to bomb Iran, not because Iran's a threat to the United States. It's not. Everyone knows Iran is not a threat to the United States. And in fact, Piers Morgan had John Mearsheimer on his show to talk about this. And for those who don't know who John Mearsheimer is, he's a foreign policy expert. He's well known for basically being very articulate and explaining the not political philosophy, but the way of analyzing foreign conflicts, realism. Realism is essentially the idea that because there's no police force in the international system, there's no greater power to protect a country. Every country is incentivized to be as powerful and as strong as possible so they can defend themselves from other threats because, like I said, there's not some third-party entity that can save you if you're being oppressed or aggressed against by another country. And that's sort of a broad definition of realism, but that's basically what it is. Every country has incentives to be as strong and powerful as possible so they can protect themselves. And honestly, the whole idea of liberal ideals, that sort of takes a back seat when you analyze foreign conflicts from a realist perspective. That's sort of a very broad generalization, but I think an accurate generalization. But the reason I'm bringing up John Mearsheimer is he went on Piers Morgan to talk about Iran, and he's going to articulate it better than I could about why this whole idea that we have to be afraid of Iran is so stupid. So I'm going to play the clip of John Mearsheimer sort of bitch slapping Piers Morgan about why Iran's not really a threat to the United States. And, I'm going to tie this all into what Ben Shapiro had to say in the clip I played at the beginning.
But the idea that a country like Iran, which is no threat to the United States, or a country like Venezuela, which is no
Iran
threat
is
to the
no
United
threat to the United States.
should... No, it's not. Why is it a threat to the United States?
Well, maybe because the Ayatollah has repeatedly threatened the United States publicly.
He can repeatedly threaten the United States till he's blue in the face. Who cares? The question is, does he have the military capability to do harm to us?
Well,
the answer is
they've
no.
had the military
capability. If it wasn't for the...
Well, what they have done, they funneled a huge amount of money into propping up terrorist organizations all around the Middle East, all of whom are wedded to the obliteration of Israel, which is America's main ally in the region, and has a lot of mutual interests. Now, you may not like it, but that's the reality. And so, yes, they represent a threat to one of America's main allies and to Americans who live in Israel, for example, to American service people who work with Israelis. Of course they do.
But you're making the argument that they're not a threat to the United States, they're a threat to Israel. And because we're joined at the hip with Israel, anything that's a threat to Israel is a threat to the United States. I don't buy that argument. I'm an American firster. I care about the U.S. national interest. And it is not in our national interest to have this conflictual relationship with Iran. And if it weren't for the fact that the Israelis have so much power in the United States and insist that we keep Iran as an adversary, we would otherwise have good relations with the...
So a couple things. Number one, I love the fact that John Mearsheimer says that he's an America firster. That's just a beautiful thing to hear. And we should be America first. If you're an American, you want to put America first. And he correctly points out that Iran is not a threat to the United States. Like, what? Is Iran going to, bomb Nebraska? It's like, of course they're not. And then Piers Morgan tries to suggest, well, because Iran is hostile toward Israel, and because Israel because Israel is an ally of the United States, therefore Iran is a threat to the United States. It's like, what? Israel's a different country. I didn't realize Israel had become the 51st state, folks. Maybe it's just a territory. Maybe it's like Puerto Rico, or it's just like a territory but not a state. They don't have to pay any taxes, but they get all the better. Actually, that is sort of what Israel is if you think about it. They're basically like Puerto Rico de facto in a sense. Not literally, of course. I don't want to be fact-checked by you idiots. But I didn't realize Israel had become the 51st state. So when Piers Morgan's like, well, Israel's our top ally, and Iran doesn't like Israel, therefore Iran doesn't like the United States. It's like, well, the reason why Iran doesn't like the United States is because we fund Israel. That's true. But that's because our relationship with Israel is totally abnormal compared to most relationships between countries. John Mearsheimer has also talked about this in the past. The relationship between the United States and Israel is a very unique relationship. The fact that the United States will almost always do the bidding of a small foreign country that has no natural resources, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of not the middle of nowhere necessarily, but in the middle of an area that's full of so much uncertainty and disorganization, conflict. And it's like, why are we so involved with this little tiny country? And people could say, well, it's, religious reasons, and that's probably true. There's still a bit of an evangelical support base of Israel for obvious reasons. I'm not going to explain it. And obviously you have, American Jews who can be supportive of Israel. I can understand why, but at the end of the day, it's a foreign country. And us supporting Israel to the extent we do support them, and what I mean by that is, I think we could support Israel in a much more healthy way. I'm not saying we want to cut off Israel entirely, but the ratio of support is way out of whack. Okay, we don't need to always go to the defense of Israel because Israel wants to dominate the region. The reason why Israel is so bloodthirsty and trying to do regime change in Iran is because Iran's probably their top competitor in the region. Iran pushes back against a lot of Israel's, depending on how you look at it, you could say either Israel defending itself, some would say Israel being a bit of an imperialist in the region. I'm not going to get into that. But Israel can't take out Iran alone. They just can't. They don't have the capacity. So they need the United States. And they keep trying to get the United States involved using pretexts like the nuclear facility back in the summer. The way Israel was trying to get President Trump to go totally into regime change was saying that we have to take out the nuclear facility. They're so close to a nuclear weapon. Iran is so close to a nuclear weapon, folks. It's terrible. Tragic. It's gay. And, luckily President Trump didn't go all in on doing regime change. He just bombed like a nuclear facility and called it a day. But that's not good enough for Israel because, Israel doesn't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon, but the reason they don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon is because once Iran gets a nuclear weapon, regime change becomes almost impossible, right? That's why you can't have regime change in North Korea is because Kim Jong-un has nukes, right? And that's why Kim Jong-un was unwilling to give up any nukes when Trump was negotiating with him back during Trump's first term because Kim Jong-un knows that if he ever gave up his nuclear weapons, he would end up like Gaddafi from Libya. And, he would be sodomized to death. It's tragic. So Iran's been very coy about this. They haven't gone fall in on the nuclear route. They haven't gotten a nuclear weapon, but they keep threatening it. Israel doesn't want them to get a nuclear weapon because then they can't do regime change. And if they can't do regime change, Israel's going to continuously have this thorn in their side with Iran funding terrorism, funding Hezbollah, probably funding Hamas. I'm not, these are not good groups. No one's defending Iran here. I want to be very clear. Obviously I can understand from Israel's perspective why they want Iran out. They don't want the Ayatollah. They want the Ayatollah out. They want regime change. You can understand that. Whether you support Israel or not, you can understand that. But then let's go to Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro says in this clip that I played at the beginning of the podcast, he suggests that, all these protesters that we need to support, and that Iran's killing these protesters. They're killing the protesters. It's like, one, why is that our problem? Okay, the Iranian government's killing protesters. To the extent that's true, who cares? Again, what does this have to do with the United States? That's Iran's problem. That's the citizens' problem. It's not our problem. That may sound cruel, but it's just a fact. How is that our problem? It's not our problem. And again, you could say that's cruel, but I'm sorry, it's not our problem. And also, some of the people listening may not like to hear this, but look, in the United States, we have government officials killing protests here too. Just look at the ICE situation that's happening in Minnesota. We've had 2 high-profile killings of protesters or provocateurs, whatever word you want to use. And in both these recent high-profile shootings, it's not clear that the shootings were justified. Certainly the latest one from yesterday, I don't think that shooting was justified, or 2 days ago, I don't think it was justified. I think the guy's name was Alex. He didn't have his gun on him, and then the ICE officer shot him anyway. It's like, what? I support ICE, I support deporting illegal immigrants, but ICE has gotten a little bit out of control, folks. I hate to say it, I don't like saying that. But my point, the reason why I bring it up is, it's a little bit hypocritical for people, crazy Israel firsters like Ben Shapiro, saying we need to take out the Ayatollah, we have to do regime change, we have to strike Iran because they're killing protesters. It's like, but the United States government's killing our own protesters in the United States. Would that give China the right to do regime change in the United States, to strike the United States because we've had some federal agents kill protesters when there was arguably not justified, the killings? Of course not. But that's the type of logic we're using here. It's so pathetic. It's so dumb if you step back for 2 seconds and think about it. So, yeah, and again, Shapiro can say this is about the Iranian people. It's not about the Iranian people. It's about Israel. And also, what is the evidence that the Iranian people want the United States to get involved? Probably, my guess is, and I could be wrong, I've been wrong before, not many times, but it has happened. My guess is that if you were to poll or ask these protesters in Iran if they actually want the United States to help them, I think most of them would say no, because I don't think most of these protesters actually trust the United States. They probably think the United States would get involved to get whatever natural resources Iran has, or to put in a puppet regime that's supportive of Israel. My guess is most of these protesters do not like Israel. The actual protesters. I mean, there's probably a non-organic element to these protesters, maybe, sprung up by Israel and maybe the United States. But in terms of the organic element of these protests, people probably don't even like Israel. They probably don't like the United States. So why do you think they want us involved there? And Ben Shapiro never addresses that. He never does addresses it because it goes against his narrative. It goes against what he wants politically for Israel and for the United States. So we should not get involved. If you're actually America first, like John Mearsheimer said in the clip I played of him, Iran is not a threat to us. If anything, we could get along with Iran if it wasn't for Israel. And people say, oh, you can't get along with Iran. That's a terrible government. The Ayatollah is terrible. It's like, well, I'm sorry. We get along with a lot of bad people. Look who we just, built up to run Syria. It's a former ISIS member, I believe, or a former terrorist. The United States has tons of relationships with bad people. Donald Trump got along with Kim Jong-un during his first term. He's a terrible communist dictator. The United States will always get along with dictators if we think it's in our interest. And getting along with Iran could be in our interest if we want stability in the Middle East. But we can't do that because we have this weird relationship with Israel. And that's just the way I look at it. I could be wrong, probably not. So Ben Shapiro, again, if you just look at the contrast of what's happening in Iran versus now in the United States with these ICE protests, that argument just falls apart completely. And again, there's no benefit to the United States over, look. And the good news is President Trump, apparently, it looked like we were going to strike Iran last week. Apparently, part of the reason we didn't is because his advisors made it clear to the president that there's no way to have a clean strike in Iran that takes out the Ayatollah in like 10 minutes like we did to Maduro. And that, to actually do regime change in Iran, it would be like an Iraq situation. We'd have to be there for years. And Trump doesn't want to do that, at least for now. We'll see what happens. But for now, he doesn't want to do that. So it's a very dicey situation. We'll see. There's a lot of pressure. You have a lot of people in the commentary world putting pressure on the president to strike Iran. Even fucking Bill Maher, this idiot, was on his show. Maybe I'll do a podcast about that later today. I don't know. We'll see. But Bill Maher was on his show the other day talking about criticizing the president for not striking Iran. That we have to defend these protesters. It's so stupid, folks. It's so dumb. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, Ben Shapiro sucks. John Mearsheimer. I can't talk today. Jesus Christ. Take a week off and I can't talk anymore. It's insane. But Ben Shapiro sucks. John Mearsheimer is awesome. Subscribe to the podcast. All right, folks, that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Again, please subscribe, whether on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I greatly appreciate it. If you are listening on YouTube, like and comment. Helps a lot with the algorithm. We shall be back tomorrow, folks. Sorry for the week break, but I needed my mental health was not so good. So I needed a bit of a break. But we will be back, regular schedule for going forward. Again, hope you have a great rest of your day. Hope you have a great week. I hope your love of your life falls in love with you. Or maybe the second love of your life. Whatever works. We'll be back tomorrow, folks. Bye-bye.